Um, I'm Shay, and I'm the lead for the Women Who Code team.
Hi, I'm Manji, and I'm an intern on the Women Who Code team.
And hi, I'm Sam. I'm also an intern for the Women Who Code team.
Cool. So the Women Who Code team, if you don't know anything about us, we're a student alliance team at the Center of Excellence for Women in Technology. So we spend a lot of time putting on programming about different languages or coding topics, things that we find really interesting. So cool. With that, I think we can go ahead and get started. I know some people are still trickling in, but we'll get right to it. Cool. So if you haven't seen the slide before in any of the other summit events, we just want to make sure that we're being as inclusive and respectful as we can. So we want to acknowledge the different Native communities that IU is built upon and the resources that have gone into making this place. So I encourage you to read this afterwards as well. Great. Okay, so you're here today, and we're here today to talk a little bit more about SQL or SQL, depending on what you like to call it. And so today, what we're going to go over, if you want to hit the next slide. So we're going to learn what SQL is and what it can be used for. We're going to write the different statements and understand the syntax of SQL, because like any programming language, it comes with its own grammar. We're going to be able to search for records in a database and format the results for exactly what we want to see. And we're going to try to narrow our search results using operators and specific criteria. Great. Okay, so starting with the fundamentals, the basics, what actually is SQL or SQL? So SQL stands for Structured Query Language. It's used for accessing and manipulating databases. And databases, the difference between data and databases is databases have labels to the data. So think like rows and columns and different like attributes that you can assign. And SQL interacts with the database with words, so different commands. A lot like how we use the English language. So we use things like and or, and so does SQL. So why is it important? What's the big deal? Well, for one, it's a very, very powerful tool. It's inexpensive, accessible, and it's able to work with insanely large amounts of data. So a lot of companies, and we can talk about this later too afterwards, if anybody's interested, look for candidates with SQL knowledge. So typically when you see a data analyst position or a data engineer position, they spend a lot of their time working on this kind of stuff. Great. Okay, so the basics, I'm sure you've all seen the table before, but in SQL, the column headings are actually called fields, and they contain the column name and the attributes of the column. So a field, for example, in this table is type, and then each row in the record, or excuse me, each row in the table is called a record, and so they contain the data for the columns. So spots is one specific record. And this would be an example for a table called veterinarian. So like imagine if a vet needed to keep track of all of those things. Sorry, keep going, Sam. Perfect. Okay. So syntax of SQL. If you haven't heard the word syntax before, it's essentially just talking about the grammar of a programming language. So it's how do we write it so it makes sense. And each line of SQL code is really similar to sentence. So above, and the one that this example here, select from veterinarian, which was the table that we were just looking at. What this translates to is show everything from the table veterinarian. So select from ends up being show everything. And just like select is a keyword, there's a bunch of other ones that we're also going to look at and learn today. But tables can and should be put into those brackets. And like a sentence, there's a period or a semicolon at the end. And that's how the computer knows like, okay, this line is done. I'm going to parse and go to the next one. So in our case, it's semicolon, just to keep that in mind. We'll remind you a couple of times when you start writing the code as well. But not all SQL statements require a semicolon, but in some database systems, they are required. So we are going to use them just to keep with consistency. So so we said the semicolon tells the computer it's the end of a statement, and an asterisk will have these different meanings that it can take on depending on the statement. So in SQL, and especially in this one example that we're looking at, this asterisk means select everything from veterinarian. So we'll go into a little bit more detail about that too. Okay, but we want to make sure that we get you guys set up so that you could work alongside with us throughout the rest of the activity. So follow the link, and we'll try to put it in the chat too, to the W3 Schools SQL page. Oop. And then you want to scroll until you find the section to access the editor. And then you want to hit the part that says try it yourself. So we'll give you a couple of seconds, maybe throw a thumbs up and a reaction once you get that to work for you. And again, thanks for joining. We're excited to have you.
And just to make sure, I put them both, but I can kind of show you what it looks like. Once you follow this link, then you'll press try it for yourself. Just making sure everyone can see like both, correct? Okay, all right. Yeah, and then you'll hit try it for yourself, and then it'll send you right here. So yeah. So if you still are getting to that link, it should just look like this.
Okay, cool. I think we might be good to move on. If you have questions or if you get stuck at any point, you can just say something in the chat, or just like unmute yourself and say something. So let's start off by exploring our database. W3 Schools is a really useful website for learning a couple different programming language, including SQL. So they have this like editor for us that we can use, and a database that's like all online. So Sam, maybe like increase the size of the window the other way, so we can see more of the SQL editor. Oh, it's at the bottom, just kidding. Okay. So at the bottom, or I think if you have it in full screen, it'll be next to it. There's this like overview of our database. So the W3 Schools database that they have for us to work with is kind of like a business's database. So it has information about things like customers, employees, orders. And so you can just click on those links under table names to explore different parts of the data. So like, let's try clicking on customers. Yeah, so it'll pop up a table. So our database is just like a collection of tables like this that have a bunch of different attributes and records. And so this is what this is the data that we'll be running our SQL commands on. If we can go to the next slide. Okay, cool. So we'll start with writing a function. So in SQL, we can use these functions or statements to basically write commands to perform different actions with our database. And so here a function is a function is a word with a specified task associated with it. So here select just pulls whatever specified data that we give it from the database and presents it to us. So for example, our statement that's already in the editor, select asterisks from categories, that asterisk represents all. So if we ran this command, it would select or show us everything from the table categories. So for an example, we could try writing a command to show me all the customer names from the customer table. So that would look like select and then customers. From the customer table. Ooh, okay. So one of the reasons that it was useful for us to like look through our data and click through it is we need to give it like the accurate information, right? We need to give it the right table name and stuff. So if we scroll down to the customer table, Sam's already got it. We see that the column is named customer name. So instead of doing customers, we'll do customer name from customers and run it. And it'll return or show us all the customer names. And yeah, that's how we would do it in SQL, which we have already done. So hopefully that all makes sense. If people have questions about that or like the select function, throw it in the chat or unmute. But I think we can move on. So we'll take this selection function or select function a step further. And what if we wanted to return multiple columns of information? So Sam, could you click on customers again, like the table?
Sorry, Zoom likes putting the screen covering it. There we go. Sorry.
You're good. So what if we wanted to get like customer name and contact name? It's pretty easy. We just list the items that we want. So in our example, we might want to see, maybe we'll do customer names and contact names. Oh, wait, there's an example. There we go. So show me product ID, product name, and unit from the products table. So we'll pop open the product table to make sure we get our names correct. And then we'll just list them after we say select. And unit. And that gets us what we want, just those 3 columns of data. And yeah, that just shows what the correct answer is. Okay, so that was kind of a lot in a very short amount of time. So we'll do a quick check-in. Okay, we have a question. Is it not possible to copy and paste the name? Is it always necessary to type? No, you can copy and paste for sure, I think, in the editor. Yeah. Okay, so we'll do a poll just to check in on how you're doing, which I have just launched. Okay, looks like most people are doing pretty good. That's good. If you have questions, send it in the chat or you can direct message one of us. But I think we're good to keep going.
Okay, perfect. Paul likes popping up again. So I'm going to go over the where function, which is basically used to filter through like certain criteria based off like a certain like column name in the database. So basically, this will be like the syntax. So like before we went over fields, that's going to be like exactly where you want to find the criteria. And it's always placed after from, and it takes in things like strings and integers, and strings are basically just contained in quotes and are like the words we're looking for. So in the next example, we're going to be doing cities. So like Madrid would be one, and those will be like placed in quotes since it's a word. And as always, you just need to like understand what your database looks like. This is what the syntax. So like we used the commas for like dependent on which columns we're looking in and like from, of course, the table we're using. And yeah, so it's always easier to look in a example. So for this one, we just want to see like show me the customer's name, contact name, and address from like all the customers that come from Madrid. So that'll basically look kind of like select how we did before, where we were selecting from different, like the product ID, product name, and unit from products, and we get to see them. But the where function, it's giving us exactly what we want from just the people that come from Madrid. So yeah, so we can look at that and try it on your own, and then I'll also go through it. I'll give you a couple of seconds to think through what you think it might be, and then we'll look at it together.
And at any point, if you're running into an error, like feel free to throw the error that you got into the chat so we can help you look at it, debug a little.
Okay, so now that you kind of are thinking like what it is, or maybe you've even started, so since we want to show me is basically in this case select, and then we're going to do customer name. And in any case, we can also use brackets, so which is helpful in case like there's like possible spaces. In this database, there's not, so you can also leave out the brackets, but it's always better to be wary. And then we'll do contact name. And if you ever want to make sure that you're doing the correct names, you can go straight to the customer. I'll recover that. And just make sure you're typing and capitalizing everywhere it's needed. And then we'll do dress. Oh. Make sure it's brackets and not curly braces. And then we want it from the customers table. We can also make this into its own line. And this is just showing you like how different like formatting can be in SQL. It's always nice to keep it consistent. And then we want to see everyone, the customers that come from Madrid. So we'll do where, and then for that, it'll be in the city column heading. And then we'll use the equal sign and do in quotes, Madrid. And then we can run that. Oh, did forget a semicolon, don't forget that. But it still gave it. And then just to show you like how important capitalization is, if I do, oh, maybe it's, there's going to be 0 records. So you have to make sure it's exact. And you should get 3 records with these. Give you a second to make sure that all looks good. And if anyone has any questions or didn't get it, or maybe isn't understanding anything like thoroughly, feel free to unmute. I can't currently see the chat, so if there's any questions, Mom Shay, make sure to let me know. All right. And if that made sense to everyone, we're going to continue on. And yeah, this is just what it looks like again. Oh, okay, there we go. Oh, keep going backwards. Okay, and now we're going to do what we like to call a challenge question. And basically we want to show all the details about products whose order quantity is greater than 10. And for that, you're going to want to use the ordered details table. So we'll give you a minute or two to try it on your own. And if anyone wants to help me with it, we can see how it is. Yeah.
Or even if you want to come off mute and tell us what you do or what you did, that would be great too.
Okay, if not, that's all right. We can also go through it together.
And we do something in the chat.
Okay.
The question. So Elizabeth asked, are the 1 equal sign and 2 equal sign treated the same? So is it like assign versus evaluate?
Yeah, I think it's not like how you would like with like the operators like greater than or equal to. It's just kind of like how we're showing like the city is equal. It's kind of treated like as a variable, like which in like different languages is like making it like an assignment. So yes, so it's like an assignment, not a comparator, if that makes sense. Okay, then.
And then one more question.
Yeah.
From Nelson, what did you say was the benefit of putting the column names in brackets?
Okay, so in our case, in this database, there's not like spaces or like any weird things with that. But if there were, we would want to put it in brackets because that just like lets SQL know like that is one column heading in itself. But if you were to put like these without brackets, that's fine. But it's always better to be, I think, a little more cautious because like if like contact name, let's say, was like contact space name, and we did like put that in SQL without brackets, it could come up with like an error. And so the brackets just like let us know that it's identified as a like all-in-one kind of, that's like the column field we want. Is there anything else? We good to go?
Anyone want to tell us what they did?
Yes, we love volunteers.
Did anybody get it working? If you did, maybe a thumbs up, just so we know. Or was everybody lost and confused? Okay, lost and confused it is. Sam, why don't you walk them through it?
Yes, I will. I'll take that as a go ahead. Okay, so for this one, we're going to want to go down and go to our order details table, and it already gives us the select asterisks from order details, but usually you would input that yourself. W3 Schools just likes to give us a little less work to do. And yeah, so we want all the details, so we'll keep this asterisk. And then of course from order details, and then after that we'll place and make sure it's all in capitals where the whose order quantity is greater than 10. So we go here, we want quantity to make sure we spell that right. And of course you can also like copy and paste this as well to also give yourself a little less work. And greater than 10. And we'll run that and it gives us 386 records, which hopefully you got as well. Hopefully you guys aren't all totally lost and confused. But yeah, okay, perfect. I see a thumbs up. All right, and then we will continue on if that looks good to everyone. Again, throw it in the chat if you're getting an error or anything like that. But yeah, this is just what it looks like again. And then we'll continue on to operators.
Cool. So operators, again, like we were talking about earlier, kind of the keywords for SQL, and they let you make certain commands. So and is a really great example, and it makes sure that a record fulfills multiple criteria at the same time. So it would be, we want something where the condition 1 is met and condition 2 is also met. So or is what lets you pull records that will show you whether it meets one or another, right? So where condition 1 is met or condition 2 is met or condition 3, and that goes on forever. And then not will get rid of all of the records that don't match your condition. So anything where the condition is not true. And those are the 3 that we're going to focus on right now. So let's start with the and operator. That one's pretty easy in terms of just conceptually understanding it. So we're going to try out an example. Let's do show me all the details about orders that have employee 4 and shipper 2 ship. So employee 4 order and shipper 2 ship. And if you want, feel free to throw any initial ideas in the chat. Otherwise, I can also. Okay, so we're starting with that same select from. So we're saying this is our table of orders, and we're going to choose records from that. And where we want the employee ID to be 4, so that employee 4 order, we're using the employee ID. And we want it to have the shipper 2. So we're going to say, and shipper ID is 2. Yep, and then we can run it. Hopefully we don't get any fun errors. No, perfect. And so you can see that all of the employee IDs have that matching 4, and all of the shipper IDs have that matching 2. Cool. Again, that's just the code. Perfect. Okay, so now we're on to the OR operator. So in the OR operator, again, we're looking for either condition 1 or either condition 2. So we're going to try to show me the customer's name and address if they come from London or Bern. So I'll ask again, anyone have any crazy ideas? No. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to select both the customer name and the address. So here it's saying, show me the customer's name and address. We're trying to return multiple values. So select customer name, comma, address, which is how you indicate that you want both. And again, we're looking at the customer's data. So from customers, where the city is London or the city is Bern. Yep, perfect. And just like that, we both have the customer names and the addresses, and we know that any of these customers would be in either Bern or London. Perfect. Okay, we'll keep going. So now we're going to do the not operator. And not, remember, is going to take out all of the records that don't meet our condition. So in this case, show me all the details about suppliers that are not from the US. In here, we're going to go select. And we're going to say select the asterisk from. Select every, so that, remember that basically means select everything from suppliers, which is the name of the database we're using. So select everything from suppliers where, and then, so in most coding languages and SQL included, you want to put the not first. So not instead, so instead of saying something is not something, we're going to say not something. So where not the country is USA. Yep. And then when you're looking through those cities, you can see that there's Tokyo, Osaka, Melbourne, all places outside of the United States. Cool. I'll pause there really quickly. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? It's all making sense. No. Silence is good news. Okay, cool. Thank you, Juliet. Perfect. We'll keep going. So we just want to point out a couple of reminders or warnings when you're going through some of this. So what if you were trying to find customers that were not from Berlin or from London in order to give them a promotion? So you need to make sure, well, so look at this statement. We're going to say select from customers where not city is London or the city is Berlin. Oh, and Elizabeth has already gotten this answer about what's potentially wrong. So if you list multiple conditions, does not apply to only the condition listed immediately after it or to all of the conditions listed. Sam, Manvi, either of you want to answer that? It's leading us right to it.
Yeah, so not will only apply to the condition right after it. So you would want to use parentheses like you would in other programming languages if you're familiar. Yeah, to indicate if you want not and multiple things.
Or alternatively, you can choose to put not twice. So one for the first one and then one for every condition afterwards. But the parentheses will save you a little bit of time and help make sense that it's being distributed to the rest of it. Yep. But you basically just gave away our answer. So. Okay.
All right, so let's move on to wildcards. So we've been like tossing the word, sorry, that's a tongue twister, the word wildcards around. So wildcards are basically just like shortcuts in SQL. So like the asterisk meaning and, so it's just different symbols that mean different things. So a new function that we're going to talk about is like, and the wildcard that we use with like is this percentage sign. And so basically the percentage sign will stand for 0 or multiple characters. And this will make sense in a second when we put it into context with the example of like. So like the like function is kind of like a search, so it'll return things that include whatever argument you give it. And so we'll use the percentage sign wildcard to help modify that. If you want to do the next one. So if we want to search for, you can put the percentage sign before, or after, or both. So if we put it before the word, we're telling the computer to search for all records that have a field ending in apple. So anything or nothing can come before it. So like red apple would be returned, but something like apple pie wouldn't be returned because we just want something that ends with apple. And the opposite, if we put the percentage sign after the word that we're searching for, it'll give us everything that starts with that word. So in this example, pear percentage sign, it would return records that start with pear. So like pear juice would get returned, but like green pear wouldn't. So then following that logic, if we put percentage signs on either side, we'll return all the records that contain the word. So if we did percentage orange percentage, it could return orange juice, red orange juice, anything that contains the word orange in it. And so here are some examples of like, so in plain English, show me every field from categories. So select all from categories, where the description contains the word sweet somewhere. So if we just want the word sweet in it, we don't care if it's at the beginning, end, or middle, we'll put percentage on both sides. So you can see the syntax there. Sam, if you want to run it, the select all from categories. And then where description like sweets. And I think in that first example, you have percentages on both sides. Okay, cool. And then we'll run it and we'll get nothing. Okay, let's double check our work.
Debugging.
Oh, wait, I think I've been saying sweets. I think it's just sweet. That's my bad. Okay, yeah, great, there we go. So now we have a description that starts with sweet and a description that has sweet in it, and we have all of our categories and things that have sweet in them. So let's change it and see what happens if we only put the percentage sign after. So we take the one that's out before. And so we get what we expect, where we only get the record that starts with sweet. I think we can move on. So watch out, let's talk about like the order of stuff again. So what if for a promotion, we were targeting customers whose contact name starts with an M and are from Germany or Sweden? So let's read through that statement and see if anyone has any ideas for what could be wrong with this. Unmute or drop it in the chat. But we have select all from customers where contact name like M percentage sign and country equals Sweden or country equals Germany. I'll wait to see if we have any volunteers. Or Sam, maybe you want to type this in and we can like see what's wrong with it.
Is it that the like part will only go with country equals Sweden? And then the or like is a new condition?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So I'll let Sam finish putting it in. But so yeah, so that's correct. So what will happen if we ran this is we'll get the like order of operations is not exactly what we want, right? So we'll get all the entries that start with an M and are from Sweden, and also all the entries that are from Germany. Yeah, so a little inaccurate, not exactly what we want. So there are 2 ways to fix this. One is using parentheses, which is our answer key answer. You could also like add an additional and statement, but adding parentheses makes it look a little neater and is shorter. So if we put parentheses around, country equals Sweden or country equals Germany, then we'll get everybody who starts with an M and is from either of those countries, which we do. We get 2 different Marias from Germany and Sweden.
Okay, perfect. And now moving on, we kind of just want a little practice makes perfect, of course. So we're going to do 3 rounds of practice statements. And of course, I would love it if you guys came off and maybe helped me with finishing them. But if not, that's totally fine too. I'll give you a minute or 2 to try this one on your own. And then we'll go through it together and check. And hopefully you guys did all right. But yeah, for this one, it's just show me the supplier's name, contact name, and phone number from suppliers whose supplier name starts with E. And again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute. I promise we do not bite or anything like that. Okay, hopefully that was enough time. If not, I can give you a few more seconds, but I'll just go through it if no one else wants to help me with it, or if you do, feel free to come off mute. But if not,
Well, we can, yeah, we'll give it a second. Does anybody want to come off mute? I promise we're not scary.
Or you can paste your solution in the chat.
yeah, either way.
Oh, perfect. There we go.
Okay. Okay, I can open up chat. All right.
So Cassia, select supplier name.
Okay, I'm gonna copy and paste this because it looks perfect to me. And then we'll run this. Make sure. Okay, yeah, that was perfect. Yes, yay. Thank you for pasting that. I love seeing everyone's solutions. Okay, yeah, so that was perfect. So if you didn't get that, no worries. I'll still go through it and kind of show like the reasoning behind it. But basically, since we wanted to say show me the supplier's name, contact name, and phone number, you're gonna do select because that's just really show me in plain English, and then supplier name, contact name, and then their phone from the supplier's set, and then where we wanted supplier name, who starts with E. So, and that's when you put the percentage sign at the end for that wildcard. But yeah, so if anyone has any questions on why that worked or you're not understanding it, feel free to paste it in the chat. Also, if you got any errors, we love debugging, so happens to everyone.
So we've got a question from Nelson. What is the reasoning for the percentage?
Yeah, so that's just kind of like another syntactical like little thing SQL has. It just basically like whether it's before or after or both, that just like lets the program know where like to find the words you put in or numbers. So for like this one, since it's after the syntax of the percentage, just like lets the SQL know that like the E, we want to find inputs where the E is in the beginning. And if we put it around both, like the percentage in front of E as well, that would just show me anything with like E in it, and we can try that too. So you'd get 22, you can see there's an E here, an E here in the supplier name. And if we just wanted it to end in E, I'm not sure if there's any, there might not be. Okay, there is. But yeah, then we would get this and this. So the percentage just acts as a syntax for SQL. Yeah, I hope that made sense. If not, I can try to explain in more depth.
So it sounded good. So
Okay, yeah. Thank you. All right, then moving on. Okay, yeah, so this is just the SQL code. And round two, we're gonna do show me everything about customers. Oh, the Zoom loves blocking it. Whose customer name starts with C and is from Brazil or Mexico. So again, I'll give you another minute or two to try that for yourself. Feel free to ask questions if you need any clarifications. Okay. Hopefully that was enough time. If anyone would like to come off mute and maybe if you got it or if you have questions or are getting an error. And again, you can paste a solution in the chat if you got it. Okay, you guys see one in the chat. Cassie is on a roll. All right, let's see if this works. Oh, sorry. Let's run it. All right. Yes, that looks good to me. Again, oh. Oh, okay, I love that. Yes, we love first time sequelers. Okay, yeah, that was perfect. But again, if you didn't get it, I'll go through it. But yeah, so we wanted everything about the customer. So again, the show me everything will be select, and then the asterisk, which just gives you all the details from the fields. And then we wanted it about the customers, so it'll be from customers. And then whose customer name starts with C. So that would be the where, since that's the field and criteria. So customer name, like with starting with C, and from the country Brazil or the country Mexico. And here, great use of the parentheses, so you didn't have to do too much extra work with adding another and. But yeah, that looks perfect. If anyone has any questions, don't be afraid to come off mute. And then here in the answer, you can see that the customer name started with C's, and we have from Mexico and then Sao Paulo and Brazil. So perfect. Okay, if no one has any other questions, then we will go to round 3. Let's, yep, okay. And then for the final round, looks pretty simple, but I think it is a little challenge, but who's employee 5? And you might have to look through the databases to kind of figure out what commands that's looking for. And again, I'll give you another minute or 2 to try it on your own. Okay. I think that might be enough time. If not, can give.
Yeah, we got another in the
Um,
chat, Sam.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Oh wow, Cassie, on a roll. Let's see if it gives us what we. Oh, computer, it's me. Okay, that was really good. And I can see the question doesn't have a lot of clarifications in it, so that's why I think it's a little bit of a challenge, because I think it makes us like kind of have to think. But for this one, you wouldn't necessarily need the first name or last name, because it's just looking for like the specificities, or I guess maybe this should work. But
I think
but
the
since it's
issue is
only
in
taking
the
it from strings, since first name and last name, they're technically string. Here we can look in here.
Sam, I think it's because the data type of like the employee number is different than the data type we gave it to compare to.
Yes, yes, that is true. But yeah, yes. Okay, yeah. So in this case, we would be taking it from like all of the details in employees. So we would still be using this asterisk. And then you still had it right on where it was where. And employee ID. Oh, curly braces again. It's 5. But in this case, we would just be getting the name, which is Stephen Buchanan. But again, like it can be a little confusing. So you just want to make sure like the type you're entering or you're comparing to is correct. Does that make sense? If not, I can give any clarifications.
We have a question from Deidre. She says, so you can use the brackets, but you don't have to on employees.
Oh, yes, I should probably be using them everywhere, because I think it's just a good practice to have, but technically, no, you don't. since like the brackets are just helpful because like if you had like a column or database with like employees and like dogs or like something like that, or like this, I don't know why I put dogs, but something like that, then if you didn't have brackets, it would just, SQL wouldn't know that you're trying to do like one statement in itself. So brackets are just helpful in keeping that like consistent and like concise.
So another question from Jay. SQL doesn't seem to care about spaces between commands. Is that true?
Are you referring to like the select from and where, or sorry, let me look at it. Okay, let me look.
Like, could you do select space and then put your next thing?
Good question. I actually
You know,
haven't,
and
like,
for example, like, does indentation matter? Does
oh, okay. So like if
space
I
matter?
did
Yeah,
like this or this.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it doesn't matter. This is just another way to show like formatting. You can do it either way. As long as it like you have a semicolon at the end of like the statement you're trying to have. Yeah.
Perfect. Cool.
Okay. I think that's all. If you have any more questions. Oh.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. We're really happy to have you. I put an evaluation link in the chat. So please take the time to do this. This help us a lot. I have one more question from Nelson. How do you upload your own data charts? Do either of you know the answer to that?
I don't think you can.
Yeah, I think you would have to like have an IDE specifically for like SQL itself. I'm not sure like the best one. I know there's
Or how
like,
do you work with your own? Yeah, there's one that I know off the top of my head. I think it's MySQL. That's pretty popular, and it'll let you upload your own databases and then name them. But you kind of have to go through like the installation for that.
and then I also put the eval QR code if you'd rather scan it on here. Yeah,
Thanks, everybody.